Dad, I want you to marry her. Rajesh Verma stood in the gleaming lobby of the Grand Hotel. His little daughter Pari perched on his hip. His clothes were clean but old, and the soles of his shoes were worn thin. He had come here for a simple errand, to drop off a small gift for his old friend, who worked as a receptionist at this hotel and was getting married soon. Pari, just 5 years old, had lost her mother 3 years ago. Rajesh had lost his wife in an accident, and since then he had raised his daughter alone. By day he worked at a small factory, and by night he cooked dinner, told bedtime stories, and tucked her in. Life was hard, but the love between them had never wavered. As they crossed the lobby, Pari's eyes landed on a beautiful woman standing with her colleagues. That woman, Ananya Kapoor, was the CEO of one of the country's largest real estate companies. Her outfit was flawless, her confidence unmistakable, but there was a loneliness hidden in her eyes that few ever noticed. Pari tugged at her father's collar and whispered in his ear, "Dad, that auntie is so beautiful. Why don't you marry her?" Rajesh turned red with embarrassment. "Beta, we don't say things like that," he whispered back, hoping no one had heard. But there's an innocence in a child's voice that can never truly be hidden. Pari's words were so clear and sweet that they carried across the lobby. Ananya, who had been in the middle of a serious meeting with her team, stopped mid-sentence. She turned around. A little girl in a yellow dress sat on her father's hip, smiling shyly, and her father, tired but completely devoted to holding his daughter close. The two women standing beside Ananya, her assistant Mira, and a senior manager Kavita, covered their mouths in shock, wondering how their boss would react to such an odd remark from a stranger's child. But there was no anger on Ananya's face. Instead, something else flickered in her eyes. An old memory, as if someone had touched a forgotten corner of her heart. "What's your name?" Ananya asked, walking closer to Pari. "Pari," the little girl answered, twisting her father's shirt between her fingers. "That's a beautiful name," Ananya smiled. Then she looked at Rajesh. "Your daughter speaks her mind." Rajesh apologized quickly. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. She's a child. She says whatever comes to mind. Please don't take offense." "Why would I take offense?" Ananya said, a soft surprise in her voice. "Honestly, it's been a long time since someone spoke to me so plainly and sincerely." She stood there for a moment, lost in thought. Then she asked, "Are you here for some work?" "Yes, a friend of mine works here at the reception desk. He's getting married. I came to drop off a small gift," Rajesh explained. Ananya nodded. For a few seconds she was quiet, glancing at her team, who were still confused as to why their boss was talking to a stranger for so long. "Can I get you both some coffee or a cold drink?" Ananya offered. Rajesh hesitated. "No, ma'am, we won't take much time. We should just—" "Please," Ananya interrupted, an unexplainable urgency in her voice. "Sometimes life stops us in strange ways. Maybe today is one of those days." They all sat down in a small lounge area. Pari, who had been shy at first, now looked delighted by the locket around Ananya's neck. "What's that?" Pari asked, pointing at it. Ananya opened the locket. Inside was a small photo of a little girl who looked remarkably like Pari. "That's my daughter," Ananya said softly. "Her name was Aditi." "Was?" Pari asked innocently. Tears welled up in Ananya's eyes, though she tried to smile through them. "She went to be with God, sweetheart. A long time ago, when she was about your age." Standing in the lobby, Mira and Kavita now understood why their boss had grown so emotional. Ananya had never once mentioned her daughter at the office. Only a handful of people knew that their CEO had lost her only child to a pediatric illness, and that she had poured her entire life into building her company ever since. Perhaps to outrun the grief, Rajesh understood the pain she carried, because he had lost his own wife too. "I'm so sorry," he said, genuine empathy in his voice. "Losing someone so close. I understand that pain." Ananya looked up. "You've lost someone too?" "My wife, 3 years ago. Since then, Pari and we've had only each other." For a moment silence settled between them, but it wasn't an awkward silence. It was the quiet understanding between two people who had seen the same shade of grief. Pari, who had been sitting between them the whole time, suddenly spoke up. "Auntie, don't be sad. If you want to stay with us, I can be your new daughter." Tears spilled down Ananya's cheeks. She pulled Pari into a hug, and the little girl held on without hesitation, as if they'd known each other for years. Mira and Kavita, watching from behind, felt their own eyes grow damp. Ananya composed herself and turned to Rajesh. "Which friend of yours works at the front desk?" "Suresh," Rajesh said. Ananya smiled. "I should tell you, this hotel is part of my company's portfolio. Suresh does excellent work here." Rajesh was stunned. You, you own this hotel?" "My company does," Ananya laughed. "I'm just a CEO who works too much and smiles too little." The evening didn't end there. Ananya took Rajesh's number. "Purely as a professional contact," she said, "so she could maybe visit Pari again sometime." Over the following weeks, Ananya and Rajesh's meetings grew more frequent. At first it was because of Pari, then slowly because of each other. Ananya, who had buried her grief behind work for years, felt lighter around someone for the first time. And Rajesh, who had been consumed by his solitary life, was learning to laugh again. This wasn't a movie romance where everything changed overnight. It was the story of a slow, honest bond, two broken hearts gradually mending each other. 6 months later, one evening, Ananya herself showed up at Rajesh's small home. Pari was standing at the door, and the moment she saw her, she shouted with joy. "Auntie's here! Auntie's here!" Ananya scooped Pari into her arms and looked at Rajesh, who stood smiling in the doorway. "I need to say something," Ananya said, her voice trembling slightly. "I know I'm a CEO and you work at a factory. The world might not understand this. But this little girl taught me something I had forgotten for years, that love doesn't look at status, it only looks at the heart." Tears filled Rajesh's eyes. "Pari started all of this." He laughed. "Maybe she understood it before either of us did." A year later, a small, simple wedding took place. No grand spectacle, no showing off, just close family and friends, and standing in the middle was Pari, holding her father's hand and her new mother's hand, wearing her innocent smile. When the priest asked, "Do you take her to be your wife?" Pari cut in before anyone could answer. "Yes, yes, this was always my wish." Everyone burst out laughing, and in that laughter, a whole new family, a new chapter, began. Ananya started a new foundation within her company, the Aditi Foundation, to support single parents raising children alone, providing them access to education and healthcare. Rajesh, once a factory worker, became the operations head of that foundation, earning his place through hard work and honesty. And Pari, who had once spoken her heart to a stranger without hesitation, became a big sister too. Because 2 years later, Ananya and Rajesh welcomed a new addition to their family, a baby boy they named Arav. Life brought them together that day when an innocent child spoke her heart without fear. Sometimes, the biggest destinies begin with the smallest hearts.